433. These are the closing days of the Third Era and the final hours of my life.
Here, and that's to talk about the next Fallout. Fallout 76 is a prequel to all the other games, and it's our biggest one yet. It is 4 times the size of Fallout 4. We always start with the world, and this time it features all new rendering, lighting, and landscape technology.
Great! They had 11 days to fix it. They didn't. They had 11 fucking days since the beta.
It allows us to have 16 times the detail and even view distant weather systems across the map. And we love dynamic game systems.
Deformed. Oh man. That hand though. What the fuck?
We have also been working on a brand new next generation single player game. Our first wholly original franchise in 25 years. We're excited to announce our next adventure.
So I'm just gonna come right out and say it. I think Starfield was a mistake down to its very concept.
Oh my god, it's these guys!
For over a decade now, people have been waiting for 2 games. There's been an insurmountable anticipation growing for the next Elder Scrolls and for the next Fallout. People genuinely believe that somehow, some way, Todd is going to walk out on stage and give us another Skyrim or Oblivion. Or that they finally learned how to make an actual Fallout game. They fail to realize a painful truth that has only become more blinding with each new Bethesda release. The Bethesda that made those games don't exist anymore. It's no longer 2011 where you're booting up your brand new copy of Skyrim that you just popped into your Xbox 360. I really think this tweet from Kretosis about a picture of some Bethesda staff going around really sums it up to a T. Quote, "The Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be shit. I just wish people would realize that without having to see blue hair and 600-pound land whales." Bethesda has spent the last decade stripping away everything that made their game special in the first place. The RPG mechanics, player freedom, and complex narratives. After Starfield, I genuinely don't know how people still expect The Elder Scrolls 6 to be a generation-defining masterpiece. To understand, we need to go back to see the decline in complexity in these games. First, we'll look at The Elder Scrolls Morrowind. The game is weird, confusing, hostile, and barely explains itself. The world feels alien, and in many ways it's similar to Dark Souls 1, though the mechanics obviously vary from each other. The RPG mechanics are deep, the writing is dense, and most importantly, it trusts the player to make their own way through the world. Then comes Oblivion, and it's more streamlined and more accessible. Well, that will probably turn off some of the fans of Morrowind, but more of the masses are attached to it. And it's not too far off from Morrowind, so most of the previous fans still like it. And as I mentioned, a lot more people got into Elder Scrolls because of Oblivion. Then, considered by many Bethesda's magnum opus, the Elder Scrolls Skyrim. And literally everything is as bare bones as you can imagine. There's practically no RPG mechanics, no traits to pick or roles at the start of the game. You just customize the way your character looks, and that's about it. Even the race-specific comments that the previous games had is basically all absent. You may hear,
"What's a milk drinker like you doing out here? Go home to your mother."
a handful of times playing as a Nord, but no meaningful distinctions. Do you want to fight for the ethnic nationalistic Nord faction as a Khajiit? Well, don't worry, because the Stormcloaks don't see color. The dialogue is painstakingly simple, and the quest design outside of the main quests are terrible. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of good side quest lines, but the game is polluted with something called Radiant Quests, which are procedurally generated fetch or extermination quests, where you go get an item or kill a group of enemies. This will be a reoccurring mechanic in Bethesda games going forward. Everything was streamlined for mass consumption. And this isn't meant to be a critique on Skyrim or a hate video on Skyrim. I actually really like Skyrim and have had fun with it. This is only to demonstrate the simplification of Bethesda's media. So when I said literally everything is as bare bones as you could imagine, well, I lied. If Skyrim was the prelude, Fallout 4 was Bethesda jumping off the cliff. The RPG systems are literally non-existent. There were a ton, and I mean a ton, of NPCs that had the essential tag, which made them unkillable. Coming off of Fallout New Vegas, where every single NPC was killable, this was a pretty big deal. It was a 5-mile leap in the opposite direction of player choice and freedom.
Say that White and I had a then you leave.
On top of that, the player character is voice acted, which removed a layer of role-playing for the player. A character that you created into a predetermined and pre-voiced character made by Bethesda, which also featured a Mass Effect style dialogue system that is somehow worse than the one in the Mass Effect games. It effectively boiled down to yes, sarcastic yes, question before yes, and no, but actually yes later. Also, the story was basically an inverted version of Fallout 3's story. The factions were incredibly weak, the settlement building was weirdly prioritized over every other aspect of the game, and to be honest, the world was incredibly mediocre. There are only 2 major settlements in this game because of the whole build your own settlements idea. So this is where I think many of the cracks became clear. Bethesda, with every entry, was making their game safer, more accessible, more mainstream. And this philosophy is what led to their parvum opus. But many people were able to accept it, especially on console, as it was one of the first games, if not the first, to have mod support on console. I know that's the only reason I played it. Then we have the exaggerated splat on the ground after jumping off the cliff. Starfield. Starfield is the endpoint of everything Bethesda has been doing for a decade and a half. A gigantic, procedurally generated game with no soul. Are there any unforgettable quests, amazing characters, meaningful choices? Most of the discussion around this game isn't about any of those things. Instead, the discussion around Starfield is about the ridiculously long loading screens, procedural planets, outdated animations, and how weirdly sterile the game feels, which I actually touch on in my modern gaming video. Despite being surrounded by NPCs, you feel like you're the only real person. Sure, there are hundreds of NPCs all walking around, but they're not doing anything. I take the 20 NPCs in the Cyrodiil capital who have set paths of things they actually do every day, over hundreds of NPCs just aimlessly walking around. Not to mention that procedural technology they use for the character creator of these NPCs is just downright atrocious. I probably couldn't even make my character this ugly. If you want any argument about how bankrupt Bethesda has become, just look at the fact there are 0 alien species to interact with in Starfield. Yes, you heard that right. There are no aliens in a futuristic sci-fi space game. But don't worry, Emil says the astronauts weren't bored when they went to space, so all of these complaints are totally void. You can see the total lack of respect for their consumers, especially in Emil, who has flippantly dismissed criticisms of his work. So I'm recording this part while I'm editing my video, but I don't actually mention what Emil said in response to criticism whenever Starfield was being lambasted when it released. He basically said, critics don't know what it's like to be a game developer, therefore their critiques were void. Now anyone with a brain can see how stupid this refutation of criticism is. You don't have to know how to cook a gourmet burger to know it tastes like shit. This absolute clown, who for some reason still has a job at Bethesda, has been the reason behind numerous narrative decisions that have completely garbled the games they were in. The writing quality in his works is atrocious, as is the quest design and role-playing depth. All you really have to do is look at the games where he had the most oversight. He was the lead designer and writer for Fallout 3 and conceptualized the main story. He was the lead designer and writer for Fallout 4 and oversaw the faction system, dialogue framework, and the main narrative. He was a design director for Starfield, which was Bethesda's biggest flop. And finally, he was a senior designer and writer for some of the worst parts of Skyrim. This guy is almost single-handedly tearing down Bethesda, so drastically that it's almost impressive. And something I want to point out is that this wasn't all of a sudden a new thing that came with Starfield. People seem to think that Bethesda fell off with Starfield, when really Starfield was simply the first Bethesda game no longer protected by the nostalgia surrounding it. And Starfield wasn't an exception. It is the most honest representation of what modern Bethesda actually is now. The Bethesda of old does not exist anymore. Whenever someone points out that modern AAA studios feel radically different from the studios that made classic games, everyone seems to pretend they don't know what they mean, and throw up their arms and exclaim, "Man, I just don't know what happened," when it's right in front of your face. I know this might ruffle some feathers, but this is not the demographics of gaming, which is why so many modern games are dead on arrival now. And by the way, before anyone says, "These 3 people have been working for Bethesda for years," there is a big difference between being in a 3D environmental artist role and a direction role. Very, very different. But they keep getting made because of special interest companies like Sweet Baby Inc., Hit Detection, Silver String Media, etc. that all push progressive politics in gaming. And a refute I always see, and even got under one of my videos, goes something like this. Gaming has always been political because of these games that touch on political themes. But the critical thing is that back then, the developers were touching on political messages that they actually believed or that they wanted the player to think about. That's radically different than special interest groups lobbying to push progressive politics in your face. And realistically, I think these people know that and purposely pretend that they don't. There's a major difference between political themes being explored in art and corporate products signaling approved opinions, and everyone with any brain cells know that. Where I'm going with this is that these people who are in control of making the games you used to love are people who care more about whether you are in favor of progressive politics than actually making a good game. And that is exactly who is making Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5 now. Think about this. Bethesda announced Elder Scrolls 6 in 2018. It is now approaching 2 decades since Skyrim released. 2 decades. There are people who were not even born when Skyrim came out that will be able to vote in 3 years. That is an insane amount of time for anticipation to build. But they can't possibly recreate Skyrim. Back in 2011, open world fantasy games were still magical. Massive open worlds were not normal yet. The idea that you could walk in any direction, ignore the main quests, discover random dungeons, become a vampire, join assassins, become a werewolf, collect Daedric artifacts, all felt revolutionary. In 2011, gaming was exploding in popularity, and so too was YouTube. That's not to say that Skyrim was only successful because of that, but it heavily contributed to the feeling that everyone had when they finally got their hands on the game. Now every game is a giant open world, and gaming and internet culture is heavily sanitized. Let's say, for the sake of a hypothetical, that Elder Scrolls 6 is good on release. Will it have the same impact and have the same feeling as when Skyrim got announced when you were a kid? Realistically speaking, it won't. Now with that said, Fallout 5 has a totally different problem. Bethesda seemingly does not want to make a good Fallout RPG, really since its inception. It has become less of an actual franchise and game to more of a brand. Power Armor, Vault Boy, Nuka-Cola, the Brotherhood of Steel, 50s music playing while shit blows up. That is what Fallout is under Bethesda. Not deep role-playing mechanics, not coherent world building, not ideological conflict, not meaningful choices, just iconography. That's not to say that Bethesda Fallout is terrible in every single aspect. The strongest aspect in favor of Bethesda Fallout is the playable world space. Apart from Starfield, Bethesda makes world spaces you just want to explore. Fallout 3, Fallout 4 to some degree, and yes, despite how empty it was at launch, and an absolutely shattering lore, Fallout 76. The world spaces are very well put together, but apart from that, there really is nothing. Really, the only good example of a 3D Fallout game is Fallout New Vegas. Deep role-playing mechanics, complex factions that have coherent ideologies, believable worlds, and choices that matter. Simply looking at the factions completely destroys modern Bethesda. The NCR is the most moral and understandable faction, yet it suffers from extreme corruption and is bloated. Mr. House can be argued as the best intelligent mind to be handed the keys to humanity, but is extremely egotistical and self-righteous. Caesar's Legion is brutal and horrifying, but still presented in a way that you understand how and why they exist. It allows you to conflict with different ideologies and moralities. Now contrast that to Bethesda Fallout factions. Well, we have the Brotherhood that went from the conservative, isolationist tech fanatics who cared for really no one but themselves, to moral crusaders against everyone that owns anything more advanced than a toaster. The Institute, who are generic evil scientists that basically want to genocide everyone else who isn't them. Why does that sound so familiar? Oh, maybe because Bethesda just copied the Enclave from Fallout 2. who are literally the exact same as the Institute, just cooler looking, and pasted them in Fallout 3, and when Fallout 4 was made, they knew they couldn't get away with having the same evil faction in 3 games, so they just slapped a new name on it. And they added the Enclave to Fallout 4 in an update, despite being totally annihilated in previous entries.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Then you have the Railroad, who want to free the machines in the Institute because synths are people too, yo. Finally, the Minutemen, who are just farmers with laser muskets. As you can see, Bethesda is clearly superior in the faction category, and know what they're doing. A complex, multi-state nation built from the ashes? Nah. How about 5 farmers? If you still don't think that's enough to show Bethesda has never cared about making Fallout, look at the Fallout show. It totally butchered the West Coast with reckless abandon. The several timeline inconsistencies, the handling of the NCR, Legion, Great Khans, the Brotherhood, and the reliance on brand recognition. Bethesda does not care about maintaining the integrity of the world like the longtime Fallout fans do. It really goes to show that a Hearts of Iron 4 mod, which is a map strategy game, has more respect for the lore than a literal official TV show adaptation. When you look at how role-playing gets more simplified every entry, how spectacles overtake logic, how Fallout just feels like a theme park version of itself, it is clear that Bethesda has never cared about making a good Fallout. I could really yap for hours about this, but I'll leave it after this. Look at Fallout 76 on release, a game that was only Fallout in name, stripped down entirely to looting, crafting, grinding, base building, and live service mechanics like their in-game store. It was solely Bethesda trying to squeeze it for every drop of milk Fallout still has. And considering Todd has stated that Fallout 5's lore will directly exist in the same canon as the Fallout show, that trend shows no sign of stopping. Because let's look at it realistically. Simplifying Fallout has been financially successful. Fallout 4 sold incredibly well, the TV show exploded in popularity, the broad mainstream version of Fallout works financially, and Bethesda will follow what makes money over preserving artistic integrity. What do you guys think about the future of Bethesda? Do you for some reason have hope in their abilities? And if so, comment down below why, because I read all of the comments. And if you agree with me and have something I didn't mention, feel free to let me know that as well. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing and liking. I also have memberships for $1 a month if you want to support the channel. But above everything, thank you so much for watching. And remember, don't you dare go hollow.